Hi, welcome back to the Petersen Automotive Museum YouTube channel. I'm Jonee Eisen, Associate Curator here at the museum, and today we're going to talk about one of the newest additions to the Petersen collection and one of the coolest cars ever made, the Vector W8. The Vector was the brainchild of Jerry Weigert, a very interesting designer who, from Los Angeles, who was a graduate of the Art Center College of Design. He decided in the early 1970s, after having worked as a design consultant for several large automobile manufacturers, that he wanted to make a car that would rival the big European ultra-high performance cars. But he wanted to do something unique. He wanted to make the car not just a performance machine, but something that was comfortable, something that used aerospace technology, and a car that was going to be fast and livable. So some people think of the Vector as the very first supercar. It's at least the first American supercar. And when it came out, it featured a mid-mounted transverse 6-liter twin turbocharged V8 that makes 625 horsepower. Top speed has been estimated to be around 218 miles per hour. It certainly, of its era, was one of the most powerful and best performing cars of its age. And unfortunately, though, it has a poor reputation. It took a long time for this car to get made. When it was finally produced, there were some bumps in the road that kind of doomed it to be a very low production model. Only 17 production cars were ever built.
I always wanted to be a fighter pilot, but my eyesight was not naturally good enough. I wore contacts, and so I translated my interest in aircraft to the idea when I started Vector as aircraft for the street, to build an advanced tactical fighter for the street, for the guy that could afford it.
So this car is currently on display in our Wedge Revolution exhibit, which is all about the wedge design movement of the mid-20th century. In the 1960s, a new generation of designers sort of eschewed the past, the rounded, bulbous shapes of cars that were popular in the 1950s, and decided that the clean wedge shape was the shape of the future of the automobile. Because of the way that the car is extremely pointed at the nose, it really lent itself to mid-engine sports cars, and so this shape became what we think of as a high-performance car. Jerry Weigert was especially inspired by the Alfa Romeo Carrabbo, a concept car designed by Marcello Gandini. You can see it here in its extreme wedge shape, where the nose to the roof is pretty much one unbroken line. And this was really the way people decided that an extreme sports car should look. It looks aerodynamic. It basically is aerodynamic, although it was mostly came out of designers' imagination rather than scientific study. And this car really, looked like nothing else on the road. The first prototype was an even more extreme wedge shape, and as it developed, when we had to start to consider putting engines and equipment in the car, the shape changed. It got a little bigger, it got a little wider, a little fatter, and really ended up making a very intimidating looking car. Again, it doesn't look like anything else on the road. It was as extreme as the Countach, and really, you look at it and you know that this is something serious.
C'est de 0 à 100 km/h.
Out of pure frustration, just saying,
So like any great supercar, the Vector features doors that open in an unconventional way. They're scissor doors, much like on the Countach. These are inspired right from the Alfa Romeo Carrabbo, which was the first car to have them. They open actually quite easily, and even after all these years, they open and close like they should. When we look inside the car, we see this great big sill here that you have to climb over to get in. And that's because the shifter for the automatic transmission is on the left side. This is due to the fact that the transmission and engine are mounted transversely. Now, unusually, this car has a 3-speed automatic. That's right, a 3-speed automatic, which seems really very un-supercar-ish. And for purists, that was just absolutely a deal breaker. The reason that they used this transmission, which was a GM 3-speed that came out of the Oldsmobile Toronado, was that it was the only transmission off the shelf that could handle the 630 foot-pounds of torque that this car produced. It was actually spec'd to 600 foot-pounds of torque, so really the only thing that is stock about the transmission is the casing. All the gearing and the internal workings of the transmission had to be beefed up to handle those extra 30 foot-pounds of torque. Jerry Weigert was very inspired by fighter planes and aerospace technology. And so the cockpit of this car is very much inspired by an airplane cockpit. It has, unusual for the time, a big electroluminescent information screen that would display the car's status, something that was way ahead of its time in 1990 when these cars were first being built. It also has lots of switches and buttons that really do look like an airplane cockpit. Another thing that was very unusual for this car, for a car of this ilk, is that it's actually quite comfortable. It has these nice leather seats, which are well bolstered, and a really nice padded steering wheel here, in case you have to stop short. And it really is meant to be, like I said, a car that is easy to drive and comfortable despite its enormous power. And actually, I'm about 6 feet tall and I fit in here fine. Jerry Weigert, the car's designer, criticized things like the Countach for being incredibly uncomfortable to sit in. It's been a while since I've been in a Countach, but I know that he's kind of right. And he wanted this car to be, usable, to fit people of my size. The seat is quite adjustable, and everything actually is fairly ergonomic. You can reach all the buttons pretty easily. Transmission shifter is again on your left, but it's well placed. It just getting in and out, of course, is sort of an ordeal. Adding lightness was sort of the philosophy of most supercar designers. Jerry didn't really care much for that because he wanted you to be able to be comfortable in the car.
I've always had a love affair for fast cars and especially aircraft, and the really significant thing about the Vector is that I integrated my aircraft interest and aerospace interest into an automobile.
It's actually really cool to finally be sitting in this. This car has always had a legendary status. They only built 17 production cars. It graced the cover of Road and Track and Car and Driver several times, really from its first inception in the 70s up until it was in production in the 90s. And with so few being built, it's a really rare experience to get to see one, and so to actually be in it is pretty damn exciting. Now, of course, it has a really shaky reputation. And one of the reasons for that reputation actually comes down to this exact car. This is Vector number 5. This car was famously bought by tennis player Andre Agassi. And Jerry started delivering cars to customers before he had really ironed out all the kinks. So when Andre Agassi took possession of the car, he was told, don't drive it to its fullest capabilities because we may need to adjust some things. But of course, when you get a car that looks like this, you're going to drive it. And so Andre did drive it. The exhaust generated so much heat that it actually started to melt the carpet in the car. And he decided that this car was incredibly dangerous. He thought it would probably catch on fire, and he didn't want to drive it around. As the story was told to me, it was actually his brother that convinced him that he should return the car to Vector. Really what it was that the catalytic converter that they used for this car, which was spec'd for a super high performance car, did run very hot, and where it was positioned under the floor of this car, it did cause the floor to get hot and melt the carpet. All subsequent cars got a new cat, and this car got a different cat that eliminated that problem, but the damage had already been done. Agassi returned the car. The publicity was very bad for Vector, and it was kind of the first ding for the company. The Vector unfortunately gained a reputation for being very unreliable, and that really comes down to one infamous road test performed by Car and Driver magazine. Jerry Weigert sent 2 Vectors to Car and Driver to be tested. These were both pre-production cars. Obviously, he didn't want to use a customer car for a road test. And these cars actually had been highly tested before going to Car and Driver. The Car and Driver writer only had 1 day to test the cars, and unfortunately, both cars had problems. One car had a transmission that kept slipping, and the other car's head gasket blew on the day of the test. Now, that car had been used for about a year for testing and had always performed well, and unfortunately just happened to pick that day for its head gasket to go. The other car with the slipping transmission is a very interesting story. Jerry Weigert at Vector hired someone to oversee production of these cars. It was someone who had worked for several of the big automotive companies in Detroit. And when he saw the production facilities of Vector, he felt like he could streamline things and make things more economical. And one thing he did was look at every single part on this car to see what could be removed. Now, this was a car that at the time was estimated was going to sell for around $150,000. So really, penny pinching was not going to have a big effect on the sticker price. But he saw certain things that could be removed. One thing was a little plastic T that sat in a vacuum line that led to the actuator that helped the transmission change gears. He asked, why do we need that there? And the head engineer at Vector, Dave Koska, said, well, you know what, we probably can remove it and just run a straight line. This would save about 3 to 5 cents per car, so it was really kind of a strange thing to focus on. Unfortunately, when they removed that, it meant that the vacuum in the transmission wouldn't release, and that's why the car had a slipping transmission when the Car and Driver tester drove it. This was something that they didn't discover until after the test, and so with 2 cars failing a magazine test, unfortunately the Vector then was seen as a very poorly constructed car. These cars actually are fairly robust, and people who own them don't really need to maintain them very much. It's a very well-made car that absolutely does not deserve its reputation as something of a bad car. So later, Road and Track tested the Vector, and the car performed brilliantly. They actually did several articles on the car and really touted its performance. And again, its reliability. Once they put that little plastic T back in the vacuum lines in the transmission always performed well. This car features many unusual engineering choices. And so this car has things like a Kevlar and carbon fiber body, something that was very unusual in the early 1990s. It is affixed to a honeycomb floor pan with around 5,000 aircraft-grade rivets. You can see these all around the car. This made it very complicated to build. It obviously very expensive to build, and that was one of the reasons why the company failed. It wasn't because the cars weren't good, it was because they cost so much to build, and that meant the sticker price was an outrageous $450,000 in 1991. Early customers ordered their cars at a $150,000 price, which the company did honor. The price quickly jumped to around $300,000, and by the end of production, it was a $450,000 car, which was way more expensive than anything else on the market. And that still didn't cover the cost of building the cars. Each car cost around $500,000 to build at the time. It was a very small production facility, and so scaling up wasn't really something that they could do, because really, who could afford a $450,000 car in 1991? So only 17 W8s were ever produced, plus about 5 pre-production cars, and Vector Aeromotive, as the company was called, eventually didn't have the funds to keep building cars. They had an investor in an Indonesian company called Megatech. As soon as this car entered production, Jerry Weigert had already started working on its successor. This car, because it took so long to get into production, the prototype being built in 1978, it was a 1970s design, so in 1990, when it started to get sold to the public, it looked a bit dated, and Jerry Weigert knew he needed something for the 1990s and had come up with a prototype car already when Megatech decided that they needed to take over the company from Jerry Weigert, and they initiated a hostile takeover. They had also bought Lamborghini at the time, and they decided to take Jerry Weigert's new prototype car and give it Lamborghini running gear and engineering. And so the second generation Vector, the M12, was basically a Lamborghini Diablo in a kind of Vector-shaped suit. And a lot of automotive fans and the automotive press criticized the car severely for the fact that it had taken what had made Vector unique and watered it down and just turned it into another Lamborghini. So this is only the second Vector I've ever seen in person. Obviously, they're extremely rare. And so to see it up close has just really been an exciting experience. In black, it looks like Darth Vader's supercar, you know. The car has such a mixed reputation. It's hard to separate fact from fiction and, you know, truth from speculation. Is this a great car? Is this an important car? Is it an influential car? I'd say yes to all those questions. And it kind of forced a lot of other car companies to rethink how they built a car like this. It was incredibly ambitious, probably too ambitious, and that's why it eventually failed, at least the company did. It achieved everything that Jerry Weigert set out to achieve when he conceived this car. So that was the Vector W8. I think I'm going to sit here and enjoy it for a little while longer. I'm Jonee Eisen. Thanks for watching. To stay up to date on all our videos, please subscribe to this YouTube channel. And when you're in Los Angeles, come visit us here at the Petersen Automotive Museum.